Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, so the ongoing FIRS back and forth with Rivers State continues. There was a press conference yesterday led by Mr. Matthew Bonjugbola, who is the team lead special tax operations at the FIRS. And he made the argument that using the inputs-output VAT mechanism, it's the collections, VAT collections, that's value-added tax for our viewers. Value-added tax collections at the state level can't actually work. So let's actually take a listen to what he said.
Only at a national level. V.A.T. cannot work at subnational level. And there is no country in the world where V.A.T. works at subnational level. And the reason is because V.A.T. depends on the input-output mechanism. And just to illustrate this, for example, assuming a business person bought an item, let's say in Osun State, and paid V.A.T. and takes the goods to, let's say, Sokoto State to sell. Remember, this business person had paid V.A.T. when purchasing the products in Osun State. And when selling in Sokoto State, it will charge V.A.T. And by the operation of the input-output mechanism, this business person will deduct the input tax paid in Osun State from the output tax charged in Sokoto State and remit any difference to the relevant tax authority. In this case, because there is a single tax authority handling V.A.T., it is the same authority that received the V.A.T. in Osun State that will receive the additional V.A.T. payable in Sokoto State. And so it is easy to work out the input-output mechanism, and there is no issue of the business person being changed. There's no issue of consumers having to pay V.A.T. more than once.
Okay, so then, of course, we'll get to this in a second, but that's Nyesom Wike, of course, talking about things being fair. But before we get to the governor of Rivers State, just to reflect on what we heard from the group lead special tax operations at the FIRS. And look, it's the argument he's putting forward suggests that because of how, and again, for our viewers, input VAT is what a business pays for its purchases, output VAT is what it pays for sales, what it charges other businesses and individuals. So using his example with Osun State and Sokoto State, if I am a bakery in Sokoto State and I get my major raw material is wheat, for instance, and I don't know, Tundu, you might be a wheat farmer in Osun State, and I come to Osun State and buy wheat from you, I'm paying input VAT on that purchase from what I'm getting from you. And then he's saying that that is going to be due to Osun State. If, of course, we're using the state level, what's complicating it, according to him, is that has to be due to Osun State. And then I take the wheat to Sokoto State, sell bread to Rufai or Doctor, and then output VAT is charged on that and is remitted to Sokoto State Inland Revenue Service. And he's saying that because there should be a single collector, which is the FIRS, that's a better model than is using a state model. But the thing is, my input VAT is your output VAT. So what I'm netting. If to say the input VAT comes out to 50,000 naira, what I've paid for wheat from you, and then I sell bread to Doctor and Rufai, the output VAT comes out to 70,000 naira. I'm netting off the 50,000 against the 70,000. I'm paying the difference to Sokoto State where I'm selling bread. Osun State is getting your output VAT, which is the wheat you sell to me, which has been netted off against your input VAT that you've used to produce your wheat. So I'm not, and again, we've got a tax professional coming on the Global Business Report later on to discuss all this, because it can be challenged with what he's saying, because and also, it's not every transaction that takes place that crosses state lines. There are some cases I could buy my wheat in Sokoto State and sell the bread in Sokoto State and then net off the input and output VAT in the same state and remit it to that state's tax authority. So, you know,
I get a little slant of what he was trying to say yesterday. So I think the dichotomy he was trying to pull was the fact that most of these VATs are paid or are collected by government establishments. So take, for instance, the customs.
Okay.
The ports.
Is also part import VAT as well, yeah.
So the states don't run the ports.
Well, Lagos has that advantage since there's a major port in Lagos. Yeah.
Only Lagos has a special case.
Correct.
So he says if you pay that through a federal parastatal that collects that, then you can now pay the trickle down. That's the differential.
Right.
He also made an allusion to Abuja. He says most of the VAT comes out of Abuja because government contracts and MDAs and the likes.
Right.
So that's why he says when you look at the pecking order of VAT collection, it's Lagos, then Abuja.
And then everybody else.
And everybody else because of the contracts.
Right.
So I think these are the things we'll get to understand in the coming days.
Yeah, that means...
But there can be exceptions, can't there? Like
yes.
import VAT goes to FIRS.
Right. And so what simple. Now? You're now nullifying the respective states' revenue authorities by like what the argument that Nyesom Wike is making because of this argument. So it's again, I mean, we'll have to see how that works out. But now going to the Nyesom Wike's quotes, which you just had up on the screen, I think he put this out in the tweet where he says, in June, 15.1 billion was collected as taxes in Rivers State, but 4.7 billion was given to Rivers State. 4.46 billion was collected from Lagos. Lagos was given 9.3. Kano generated 2.8. They got 2.8. Have you seen the injustice in this country? I will not be governor forever. It's not about me, but about the system. Speaking of the system, he also disclosed, and this is very, very key here, that the FIRS actually sought legal assistance from the National Assembly to move VAT collection from the concurrent legislative list, which is controlled by the states, over to the exclusive list on the executive side to be controlled by the federal government. In a letter, I think there's actually copies of that letter that are out. And the thing is, for this to pass, it has to pass 2/3 of the National Assembly and also 2/3 of the state assemblies. So what's that? 23 or 24 of the states out of 36. For this to now move into the executive column and make it easier for them. So, and I think this, with legal folks I've talked to, it might weaken the FIRS argument in that they were trying to move that over in order to allow them to push through. So that's the latest development with this, and it does open things up.
Well, this is about revenue at both the subnational and the federal level. And what we have seen, particularly on the part of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, is very unusual desperation to be able to get a better share of revenue, not just for the federal government, but also certain subnationals in the country that are considered disadvantaged. So at that level, I find the argument, the explanation by the taxman from the FIRS a bit dubious. But I think it's important that the conversation is on the table and those details can be worked out. What has happened is that the FIRS has now gone to the National Assembly, saying that the National Assembly should take a second look at Section 58 of the exclusive list and see, how the collection and management of value-added tax can be included. And also a review of Section 251 of the 1999 Constitution. So FIRS, beyond the courts, has now gone to the National Assembly for legislative action. But what the FIRS must be reminded of is that, look, every subnational is represented in that National Assembly.
Right.
And that's why I think what we're dealing with here is, an issue about restructuring at the level of revenue collection, revenue allocation.
Yeah.
And this is the key issue that has been raised. In that regard, it is interesting also to note that some other states are already supporting Rivers. We have had a case of Lagos. Lagos State, a bill on Lagos State value-added tax, has gone past second reading. And Lagos State was one of those first states to react to the attempt by the FIRS to get the National Assembly to amend the Constitution, which was a question that I posed to our guest yesterday, Dele Farutime. But he was saying that, look, what we're dealing with is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Two other states are also saying that they are in support of Rivers State, Akwa Ibom and Adamawa from the north, interestingly. So we have more states speaking up on this particular issue, and it will be useful to test the law. The FIRS, apart from appealing to the National Assembly to come up with a bill, has also gone to the Court of Appeal, where it is appealing the ruling by Justice Stephen Palm of Port Harcourt, of Rivers State High Court, and also asking that there should be a stay of execution on the basis of which it has been intimidating businesses. So I'd like to see all of this tested in the court of law, and we hope that this will not end up like the case that was first instituted by hoteliers in Lagos in 2019. The Supreme Court found in favor of Lagos State, but FIRS, with this kind of desperation, never allowed that to happen. As for Nyesom Wike is saying that he met with Shell and other corporate entities in Rivers State yesterday, and he made it clear to them that they should ignore the FIRS, trying to act as an appellate court, trying to overrule the subsisting judgment of a court of a competent jurisdiction. And he said people should pay. Otherwise, whoever does not pay, their premises will be sold off. Well, I don't know whether that can be interpreted as a resort to self-help or not. But Nyesom Wike took the consequential step of making it clear to relevant corporate stakeholders in Rivers to say that, look, you have to pay tax to us. And that will not be enforced by the police. That is the state that would enforce it. He also raised very important questions about the lack of equity in the sharing formula. Although if you look at the sharing formula, 50% goes to the states, about 25% to the federal government, about 3% is dedicated to derivation. But the big issue, the big concern is how do you ensure equity and justice? And the point he made, which I think is valid, why should people like Dele Farotime, as he was pointing out yesterday, drink brandy in Lagos, buy brandy in Lagos, and buy beer and drink beer, and or have Owambe parties, and people in Zamfara and Sokoto states will be enjoying the proceeds of the VAT that is paid on that bottle of alcohol. So these are part of the contradictions we have at the heart of the national question in Nigeria, which we will have to resolve for this country to move forward, for everyone to have a sense of belonging or ownership.
It's important to note that Mr. Gwajumbola of the FIRS said he has no idea of any bill being sent to the National Assembly. It's important and interesting to make that point.
No, they didn't send a bill. They made an appeal. It was an appeal.
He said he's not aware of any of that.
Well, many of these public officials are absent-minded anyway. They don't know what goes on around them. So maybe it's just one of them, because that was widely reported. And we do not yet have an official, disclaimer in that regard.
Okay. I will take a short break now, so thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much.
Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now we're going on to global business updates, and Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Very good morning to you. Yeah, a lot of conflicting directions really for the markets this morning, getting pulled in all sorts of directions. No clear view, lots of risks circulating. So basically equities suffering as they always tend to do when nobody knows which way to travel. Asia Pacific then, China's inflation data passed really without incident this morning. Year on year came in at 0.8%. Lower than expected. Year-on-year PPI soared to 9.5%, but only slightly higher than last month. More attention will be focused on Tencent and NetEase. I'll come on to why in just a moment with those two. Overall, a sense of caution. Japan's finally paused for breath. You know that they're going to get a new premier there, and then they're thinking about whether he's going to inject some kind of stimulus within the economy. So Tencent in China and NetEase shares dived right down after Chinese authorities summoned the firms over gaming concerns. They called in Tencent and NetEase and other game companies for an interview reminding them of restrictions on game time for children. Tencent shares down nearly 4% in morning trade, NetEase down 7%. China's Tesla rival XPeng plans new vehicles and targets a future in robots and flying flying cars. The company's CEO of Xpeng said the company is building a research and development team for flying cars that will have a few hundred people. Not sure what that says in the cars or on the teams. He also said the company will continue to release new models, including a potential 7-seater, and we'll see an increasing portion of revenue generated by software. So as far as the US is concerned, Wall Street really edged lower overnight. Concerns about the US recovery, concerns from the US, the Fed Beige Book, which is basically a business survey throughout the country, and also New York Fed President Williams saying that tapering could occur sooner rather than later. And a rather unsettling report showing that millions of jobs are still available if US citizens actually want to take them. And also, here's the big one, US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has sent a letter to congressional leaders overnight warning that the government's going to run out of money in October. Now, this tends to be a bit of political theatre. It always happens every year, but this time it's being seen as a lot more serious given the amount of infrastructure debt that Biden is actually putting together, including the $3.5 trillion social care package. So therefore, the market's down. ECB meeting today. There's a feeling it might be dovish. Some people, of course, think it won't be, and they feel as though it'll put some flesh on this tapering thing that's been the first central bank really to talk about. There'll be a lot of table slapping from Northern European, including German members of the ECB, who don't see why they their strong economies should be supporting weaker ones, but that's what you get when you link all these different economies together. Ukraine is the latest country to enter to legalize Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, not necessarily just Bitcoin, but other ones, going global. The bill has been set in motion in 2020. It will be signed off probably in about the next couple of weeks. It's been a bit of a grey area. It's not like El Salvador, which is adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. It's just intended to regulate it more slightly, but it plans to open the cryptocurrency market in 2022. UK then, and dropping out of the list of Germany's top 10 trading partners as a result of things being rather more difficult in terms of trade and exports and so on. Exports to Germany have been in free fall, and exports from Germany to the UK also declining a lot. Britain, as you know, left the European Union single market at the end of 2020 after 4 years of wrangling, and this is part of the payment for that. UK driver shortage. We've been talking about this over the past couple of weeks. Driver HGV vehicles not stopping supply chains basically, and Eastern European HGV drivers interviewed by a number of newspapers have been saying overnight that they don't like working in the UK, that the conditions are bad, the pay isn't any good, and also legislation about called IR35. I won't bore you with the details of that, but it basically means that drivers cannot work as limited companies, or indeed, but they get taxed in the same way that employees do. Employees get taxed so that they can have paid for holidays and healthcare and the rest of it. These drivers are taxed, but they don't get those kind of benefits. Amazon has revealed, now let's look at this, it pays just about 400 million in taxes. Its sales surged to 20.6 billion. So more worries for Amazon in terms of regulation and the UK and so on. Amazon and other tech firms which pay tax on profits, not sales, though, have faced scrutiny over their levels and tax bills. Amazon, for its part, said it's very, very proud of the significant economic contribution it's making to the UK economy. Okay, oil prices back finally rising slightly overnight. Gulf of Mexico struggling to get back, though not quite sure what the result of that's going to be. Little early to say, quite honest, as far as oil prices are concerned. And gold is struggling once again, very much dependent on the strength of the dollar, depending on which way that goes. We'll get more of that, I think, when we get the US jobs figures. I'll be talking with Rotus about round about lunchtime on Arise.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
All right.
Have you been following the trial of Elizabeth Holmes? I want your take on it. Is it naivety, as her defense counsel is saying, or was she truly fraudulent? You'll recall, obviously, Theranos once valued at $9 billion, and she was the next Steve Jobs with her black turtleneck. And, you know, it all came crashing down. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are I should leave this basically to the legal process going on at the moment. I do not wish to comment on it because it's actually live at the moment, and it's therefore it would be not a good idea to comment on these kind of things right now. I'll let the legal process go ahead, and then after the legal minds and the case has actually reached a conclusion, I think then is the right time to comment on it. Let the lawyers, let the judgment, let the jury have their say about what's going to happen.
Two quick issues, Michael. First, the Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey, is saying that economic growth recovery is leveling off. So many issues, bottlenecks, supply chain issues. So how soon are we likely to have, the government in the UK addressing the challenge of interest rate, with employment figures also going up? And now, you made a point about the UK falling off the list in terms of its trade relations with Germany. But is it only Germany? It looks like, the UK, as a result of Brexit, is in trouble with regard to trade. Imports and exports are great, disalignment, non-alignment in that regard. What do you think we should expect going forward? Now, the second issue I wanted to raise has to do with Jerome Powell, the Fed Reserve Chairman in the United States. I brought it up when we were discussing Jackson Hole and all of that. But in the last 24 hours, the latest person who has had to advise President Biden not to reappoint Jerome Powell in February when his tenure, ends, is Joseph Stiglitz. Joseph Stiglitz is a heavyweight, a former chief economic advisor to President Clinton, World Bank chief economist, and Nobel Prize winner in economics. And he's saying that whatever, Jerome Powell may have done in the face of the pandemic is something that any reasonable person would do. Monthly bond buying, stimulus packages and all of that. But as in terms of climate-related issues, in terms of having a long-term view of how to manage the economy, and in terms of, his general approach that he does not deserve reappointment. And he's not alone in that regard. He even cited the example of Alan Greenspan, who was reappointed by President Clinton. And he said, look, if Biden reappoints, Powell, that will be a repeat of the Alan Greenspan mistake. What do you think?
Well, I honestly feel if it were me, and I remember Biden's got a long way to come back now with the US public and so on after Afghanistan and so on. I feel that a lot of people are looking at him in terms of complete weakness. And actually, I feel as though, I'm not a politician, and as you know, I don't talk about political things. But all I would say is that if I wanted a safe pair of hands, I'd stay with Powell, quite honestly, and not go with Stiglitz. I get you, I understand all that, but his political experience is from decades back now. It's a totally different world then. We are now living in a world where we're actually seeing there is a real worry, not a politically staged worry, but a real worry that the US Treasury is going to go bust. That's what we're looking at right now. So I don't think that necessarily this situation in anybody's hands is either going to be better or worse. If I were Biden, I'd be just going for the status quo. It's a very difficult job, and people only weigh you up with your mistakes rather than your successes. Who knows what the successes are, because they don't come to fruition for a number of years. Mistakes happen overnight. If it were me, I'd go for the safe pair of hands. As far as the UK is concerned, yes, many problems. I think that the governor of the Bank of England, whether he be good or bad at his job, whatever it may be, he did actually say that he expected a rapid return to growth and then it would probably level off. So it's actually happening right now. In terms of dropping down the export list for countries, yes, sure, life's going to be very, very tough. I think that people knew that. But remember that Germany it may well be. And the reason I brought it to your attention is it was a headline this morning, and I deal in news stories, as you know. So therefore, that's the latest problem. However, nothing ever stands still, and Germany is going to be going through some very, very crucial elections towards the end of the month. The end of next month, and therefore, it's, you know, who knows, if a new administration comes in, there may be new challenges, and certainly Germany's manufacturing industry is feeling the pressure at the moment because people don't necessarily need manufacturing things. The future is semiconductors and artificial intelligence, neither of which, to my knowledge, Germany is particularly well ensconced in.
All right, let's talk about default. Janet Yellen has been shouting about defaults. They have to raise the debt ceiling again in America. What's your take on that? And secondly, the numbers coming out of America are not good numbers. There are lots of vacancies, but people are not filling up those roles. That's the problem. People are not going back to work the way they should. And that is also confusing the conversation on tapering. Removing those stimulus, at the same time people are not going to work, at the same time affecting the economy. What are you saying about this quandary coming out of America?
First of all, Yellen, I did say at the beginning of all this that it's normally political theatre around about this time of the year. It's slightly more serious this time, as I understand it, because Biden does not have the standing of politicians or the US public that he had before the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So things are getting fairly serious. And there'll be a lot of people looking at this, not just investment managers, huge investment managers, but also economists and politicians all the way around the world, looking at what America tends to do. They've never seen America in a position like this for a very, very long time. Certainly, as I said, you always get this kind of conversation around this time of year. This time, it's a lot more serious. And I think when you hear somebody like Yellen talking about it, given her experience with the Fed, I think we should be taking it quite seriously. As far as job vacancies are concerned, yeah, they're quite shocking, aren't they? Hence the very weak jobs figures that we got from the United States on Friday. They were hugely weak, hugely less than expected. And there's a massive, I don't know how many it is. I mean, I've seen 10 million, I've seen 5 million, I've seen 1 million. I don't think anybody really knows. But what's clearly happening is that after furlough, and we did talk about this, the program at the beginning of the end of last month, which the fact is this, that people have been off work on furlough for so long that the authorities are not addressing the real problem. What kind of jobs will they have to go back to? Number one. Number two, what's happening about childcare in the United States? Is that part of the social care package? I think it partially is. But is that message actually getting through to people? That's what's keeping people going back to work, is actually looking after their families, which they've been cooped up with for the past couple of years.
Michael, just before you go, it looks like Prime Minister Boris Johnson is getting away with the tax rise, 1.25 percentage points on for social care and health care. He got, 319 to 248 votes in the House of Commons yesterday, despite Labour voting against it, and 5 Tories in Parliament, MPs, refusing to vote, along with the government. Well, you said it yesterday that, the move by the government is accepted by the average person. Maybe you've been vindicated again.
All right. Michael,
I don't think so. I mean, it's very nice of you to say so. I don't think so at all. I'm just going on what I hear from people, actually. As far as politicians are concerned, I think there's a considerable amount of pressure placed on Conservative politicians to vote for this. I personally do not think it's the way to go. And I'll say why, because I don't think increased taxes help anybody apart from the civil servants and pay their salaries and so on. And is this healthcare, is the NHS, is it all going to be better governed as a result of throwing more money after it? No, it's not. It never works. What you have to do is you have to give, and it's very difficult to do in public services. You've got to give people targets, and then you've got to make sure you have the leverage to be able to make them meet those targets and face up to it if they don't. That's really difficult to do in any country.
I mean, you're very spot on, Michael. As we go, the FSB, Federation of Small Business, has said those tax increases will lead to 50,000 job losses. 50,000 job losses. So you're spot on as regards that. Thank you so much for your time. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesuwa Mora is here with us. Adesuwa, great to have you. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very good morning from the nation's capital, Abuja. Good morning, Tunu, and good morning, Dr. Baki.
And good morning, Dr. V.A.T. Morning, good to see you. Now, we do know a total of 174 countries, territories, or areas have now reported the highly infectious Delta variant of the coronavirus, and that's according to the weekly epidemiological report of the WHO. We do know that's driving up cases and deaths globally, but let's take a look at the latest statistics according to the Johns Hopkins University. Well, the JHU is reporting that the COVID-19 has killed more than 4.6 million people and infected over 222 million others, and almost 6 billion doses of vaccines have been administered globally. A quick reminder, as I would like to do, that most vaccines require 2 doses, and we are beginning to see more countries administering a 3rd dose. All of that make up that numbers. We'll talk a bit more about booster shots in a moment, but let's also look at the statistics here in Nigeria. Now, the country recorded another 559 infections and 5 COVID-19 related deaths in Nigeria in the last 24 hours. Lagos posted 232 of those new infections, while Gombe State in the northeastern part of Nigeria saw the least infections for the day, reporting officially just 2 cases. On vaccination, quickly moving to vaccination, Nigeria has fully vaccinated 1.4% of its targeted population. The watchword in that sentence is targeted. The NPHCDA says that in total, over 3.7 million eligible persons targeted have received a 1st dose, while another 1.6 million of total eligible persons targeted for the COVID-19 vaccination have taken a 2nd dose. That's full vaccination, which makes up the 1.4% for the targeted population. Tundu, you say this all the time. You think that the global health body has lost all credibility. Perhaps this next update, buttresses such criticism by you and many others, as an earlier request for wealthier countries to halt booster shots has largely fallen on deaf ears. But that hasn't stopped the head of the organization from making the call again. This time around, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says he's appalled that many poor countries can't get jabs while wealthier countries are considering 3rd doses, and he's urging them this time around to halt administering booster shots to at least the end of this year. It comes on a day COVAX, the global sharing program, announced it is on course to fall nearly 30% short of its previous goal of 2 billion doses this year. How much of a difference will this call by Dr. Tedros make? We keep our fingers crossed. We're better at playing the waiting game at this point. Quickly to India, where authorities are restricting religious festivals due to the threat of a 3rd wave. Several governments across the country have started to keep a check on mass gatherings ahead of the 11-day Hindu Ganesh Chaturthi festival, which starts on Friday in the country. To the U.S., President Joe Biden is expected to outline a plan to curb the fast-spreading Delta variant of COVID-19 in the country. Now, U.S. infections are at their highest since March. So are hospitalizations and deaths, driven mainly by cases seen among those unvaccinated, according to officials there. Now, few details have emerged about this new strategy by President Biden, but we do know that it includes vaccine mandates for the country. Finally, let me tell you that another president here in Africa, President Museveni of Uganda, isn't convinced that schools are safe to be open just yet. He has reportedly overruled government technocrats on their proposal that schools should reopen next month. Instead, President Museveni is tasking members of his own COVID-19 response team to examine the impact of limited vaccination of teachers, support staff, and elderly parents, alongside risk of anticipated 3rd wave of the pandemic on learners should they resume to school. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Adeswa. With regards to WHO, it is really sad. The outbreak of the pandemic would have been a great chance for the WHO to really instill trust, but they dropped the ball there. And I'm sorry, they've never been able to regain it. with regards to that appeal yet again, and Tedros Ghebreyesus trying to appeal to people's better angels, that's going to fail. I mean, I was watching the House of Commons vote in the UK yesterday. You see all those MPs there not wearing their masks. Everybody is over what they've been calling non-pharmaceutical measures. Nobody is interested in wearing a mask. Nobody is interested in social distancing. They just want to get back to normal. In order to promote that and ensure that, or attempt to ensure that, they will go ahead and give booster shots. And if that appeal was coming maybe in June, it might even have had more of a chance, but not as we're approaching winter. We're in autumn now, we're approaching winter, and that's flu season. So I do think the Western countries are going to completely ignore that, which is a shame when you look at this story that you just shared now about Uganda and how there's such a shortfall in Uganda and so many other African countries. It is extremely selfish, but they're thinking about the health of their people and just really restarting their own economies. As for India, I'm glad the lesson was learned, even though the lesson cost so many lives. That Kumbh Mela festival that was allowed to go on by President Narendra Modi was a tragic mistake that he made. I'm glad it's not been repeated. And I have a grim fact for you this morning, Adeswa. There have been more COVID deaths in Florida in the last 2 weeks than U.S. military deaths in Afghanistan for 20 years.
Okay, let me start.
No, do you want to respond, Adeswa?
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not surprising. It's disheartening to hear, it's disheartening to know, but it's not surprising because when you look at the response to the pandemic in Florida, you're left with, very disheartening responses anyways. No mask mandates, controversial mask wearing policies in the country. People are not taking up vaccinations. So, I mean, it's not surprising, but it's sad anyways.
But part of the problem in Florida is the position of the governor, who has had to be resisted by, the counties and also by parents whose children are returning to school. The United States has been able to record 56% full vaccination, 62.3% of persons who have taken at least one shot. But the main problem that the United States faces is this Delta variant, which has resulted in increased hospitalizations. And what President Biden is trying to do, beyond his initial July 4 deadline, is to give more directions today. We're waiting for that in terms of content. But there is a speculation that there may be more mandates, there may be more in terms of testing, because the United States, which continues to lead the coronavirus map, it crossed the 40 million caseload, mark in the last 48 hours. And the U.S. has recorded about 650 deaths. So we'll get to know the details later today because John Psaki, the spokesperson, was not able to offer us the details within the last 24 hours. As for India, yes, India. They had the Kumbh Mela festival, which led to about 200,000 deaths. You add to that also the elections that they had, the regional elections that they had, and then you add to that again, recently in August, the Onam festival in the state of Kerala, which also resulted in the death of so many. So India is just facing up to reality. India is saying that the third wave is real. And then the festival, the Ganesh Chaturthi Hindu festival, that will involve so many people across the state. The state governments are saying there will be restrictions. Some of the states have imposed curfews. Some of them have imposed restrictions. Some of them have even said the height of the effigy that you use for the festival must be at a particular level. As for Uganda, yes, Uganda, the president has called for a meeting next Wednesday where the health authorities will talk to the president. And his main point is that the last time schools were allowed to reopen, the children got infected in the schools and they took the infection back home to their parents. About 4.8 million people are vulnerable, according to the president of Uganda, and only 1.4 people have only been immunized. Tedros Ghebreyesus, WHO Director General, I think he's just being consistent. He has said this again and again, vaccine equity. Last month he gave a deadline of September. Now he has moved the deadline to December. But the question is, will anybody listen to him? That's a big challenge. Because even in the UK, there is a lobby for booster jabs, and the UK is planning to administer 35 million jabs, extra booster shots by the end of the year. In the US, Anthony Fauci, only yesterday, was saying the US will go ahead with the booster shots, particularly for the elderly and the immunosuppressed. And it's the same argument in Spain, in Germany, and in some other leading countries of the world.
All right, before we go to break, I don't buy Narendra Modi's hypocrisy. The reason why he can cancel religious festivals is that there are no more elections. That time, there were elections. So he needed a religious festival to make people vote for him and his party. But now there are no elections. Politicians,
no,
I know
it's
they
not Modi cancelling, it's the states.
I know.
It's the state governors taking a position and saying, these are the restrictions.
Because there are no elections. Because there were state elections then, but now there are no longer elections.